Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com with part 7 of the Eudes Picard study, if you want to call it that, or study guide. Today I'll be reviewing the Suit of Swords. Before I get into that, however, I do want to acknowledge the unrest that is currently happening here in the U.S. If you're American, you already know, but for those of you who are overseas, you may not have all the information. A particular right-wing voice piece for racism and you name it, everything that is ugly about the red group, he personified and was vocal about. In fact, when questioned about children being massacred at schools, his response was, a few children's lives is the cost for having the Second Amendment. I abhor the violence. That's the whole point of the left. That's one of the main differences between the two parties. But I think it is ironic that the man died on the hill he stood for. I guess, he was sacrificed as the price to pay for having Second Amendment rights. Now he's being touted as a hero. He flew on Air Force Two. A week before, I'm not going to say her name, but LL called for him or identified him as a traitor because he advocated the e-files to be released, and also he stood against, I don't want to say the name of the country, but it begins with an I. So she identified him as a traitor in the camp. So this kid, who may or may not have been registered to vote, because it seems like he wasn't responsible enough to vote, but he was part of a right-wing conservative family who were all registered, all registered in the red, took heed to what she said, perhaps, and took it upon himself to remove the traitor. He went home, he confessed to his father, who then contacted a family friend who was either a minister or a sheriff. I'm not clear on who he told. And then that individual called the authorities. So he wasn't discovered or found out by the authorities. And I'd be willing to bet my reputation on the fact that if the authorities had found the person, he would have been a convenient Democratic patsy. But as it is, they got a full confession. He was turned in, so we know who did it. And he was from a conservative, right-wing, Mormon family, white male, not a trans, not an immigrant. So I just thought I'd bring you up to date. You might ask, why didn't I do a reading on it when it happened? Because I had a bias, and I don't think I would have been able to read with the strong bias I had, which was, it was one of his own. Now, my thought was that it would have been one of his own in order to divert from this, I'm going to say a curse word, so let's let you know, the shitload of trouble that's who is in, because who is taking a lot of heat, or had been up until this point, for the e-files and for that birthday card. And it wasn't looking good because it's evident that the signature was his. 20 years ago when no one could have forged his signature because no one at that time would have known that he would have been a president of the United States 20 years later. So he was in a heap of trouble. This is the perfect diversion. So I had assumed it was somebody who was put up by the party to do this. However, I knew that he would probably never be found, or if he were, it would be a patsy from the other party. I still think that could be the case. This kid could have been put up to do this, told he would be a hero, that he would never be found, but for whatever reasons, he confessed to his father, who turned him in. Or didn't turn him in, but told someone else who did, in fact, turn this kid in. Anyway, Study Guide 7. We are moving quite along, and I think we're on the, what are we on, the swords? Yes, the suit of swords. So let me get on track here. Oh, and in the meanwhile, when I paused to get to my notes, a package came in the mail, and I was alerted from someone that I'd be receiving a gift. So I think it's only fair to showcase it in real time. So Marie, thank you. I know this comes from Marie from Canada. Oh, wow, look at that. How cute. Is there a note? I'm just looking to see if there's a note. So there is information on how to properly care for this and identifying what it is. A multi-stone silver ring set with 2 round citrines, 2 heart-shaped amethysts, 1 small round garnet, 1 small blue sapphire, 1 small genuine pearl, and 1 small round peridot, which is my birthstone, and with a square cabochon moonstone in the center. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Let me turn the camera around so you can see. Thank you so much, Marie. I can't get over this. I can't get over your kindness. I have the best subscribers ever. I really do. Here we go. Sorry, it's a little bit hard to... She packed it so nicely. Oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, let's see how it fits. It fits perfect. It might even fit my middle finger. Yes, it does. Wow, look at that. Thank you. Thank you, Marie. This is gorgeous. Look at that. Very beautiful. I wear it with pride, for sure. Thank you so much. Let me flip the camera. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marie. This is lovely. I will cherish it. Okay, back on track with the suit of swords. And it also arrived with a cute little pouch. I wanted Marie to know that I did get it. Okay, now the content I take from the Synthetic and Practical Manual of the Tarot, written by Eudes Picard in his own words, translated by Daniel Bernardo. Ooh, sorry. Now, as most of you are aware, I am not one who subscribes to the occultist perspective. However, I like to keep things interesting for myself. And one of the ways to keep life interesting for myself is to study a deck that I'm not really familiar with. I've also been attracted to this deck because it's a beautiful deck, and I wanted insights on it, to see if it would be interesting to use in readings. Now, I think I'd be inclined to use this deck in readings. However, I am learning that most of the definitions that are applied to the cards are not ones that I would particularly choose. However, that's not to say that I'm not getting some insights on some of the cards and, learning, to some degree, some insights or to further enhance my understanding of what some cards might be. Okay, the Ace of Swords. Now, we're seeing it surrounded with water, not air. The Ace of Swords is held by a hand, pointing or piercing a crayfish. The water is described as still water. In the sky, we see 2 crescent moons. This ace is described as the beginning of something. So this is the first time we see an ace described as beginning. In this case, it's the beginning of a fight. So I get the immediate sense that the suit of swords is going to be an aggravating kind of suit. The hand with the sword exerts its will on the poor creature. It reminds me, this is my own words here, of the dogs of prey in the moon card, thwarting the crustacean from emerging to eat at night, which is what they do. And then he also equates this, so then he goes and he does equate this card to the moon, evoking difficulty overcoming obstacles. So I made the connection to the moon, but then he also does as well. The meaning he gives this card is a fight. Now, the Two of Swords, we see, I think, a very agitated scene. And 2 swords with points in opposite directions. One is pointing to the sky and the other is pointing into the water. It looks antagonistic, doesn't it? With a bolt of lightning between the 2 swords, I think the card depicts conflict of fire and water, lightning bolt and ocean. The meaning he gives it is rupture and or a duel. The 3 swords. Again, we see 3 swords, or the 3 suits depicting or forming a triangle, and it's in murky water. That's as he describes it. 2 points are directed towards an upturned fish. Now, in my experience, an upturned fish means a dead fish. 3 lily pads sink to the bottom, so they're on the way down, and the dead fish is bottoms up. He does acknowledge the fish is dead, and goes on to describe the evolution of evil attacking a moral principle. There is here no association with the Empress, so there's no connection there. The meaning he gives it is something that's perverse or morbid. Now, this isn't something that I would ascribe either to the 3 of Cups or the 3 of Swords. Now, the 3 of Swords in the Rider-Waite-Smith tradition, you could see as heartache, but I don't know that you'd see it as perverse or morbid. So this is its own take. Here we have 4 swords. 4 swords seem to converge at a central point in the water. The sign of Scorpio seems plain enough to recognize, and it surrounds the points. The sign of Cancer is at the top of the card. He describes Scorpio as an evil sign. He says this card describes the realization of evil in all planes, especially in the physical realm. The meaning he gives this card is disease or attack. Here we have 5 swords. Again, when we see 5, we typically see that he puts it in the configuration of a pentagram. He describes it a pentagram in a rough sea. Above, there is the eye of God, who versus evil. So he has, above is the eye of God, opposing evil, opposing a perpetrator. The meaning he gives it is remorse, moral punishment, and a cry of consciousness. So a cry of conscience, excuse me. So it seems as though he ascribes to this card someone who recognizes their moral shortcoming. That's the gist I get from the card, or from his written description of what it means. Here we have 6. Again, we see a configuration of 2 triangles created by the swords. So he describes it as 6 swords form opposing triangles. One points under to a crayfish and the other at 2 ram's heads. We are reminded of Cancer and Aries, fire and water, and the struggle between freedom and servitude. The meaning he ascribes to this is dependence or shaky health. So my understanding or my feeling is that some of these cards have kind of like hard to connect with the image kind of meanings. You know, it's some of them seem a little bit on the random side. I'm also noticing that there is no association from what I can see of the Kabbalah other than what you bring to it with your own understanding. And the most that I'm seeing as far as astrological stuff is just the symbols of the suit, just to remind us, the purpose of which seems to just remind us what sign of the zodiac, or, you know, if it's an earth sign, a water sign, an air sign, or a fire sign. So it doesn't seem as though the astrological symbols or references do anything other than just remind us the energy that's behind the card. Okay, 7 of Swords. Again, we have a square and a triangle forming the 7. This time, a sleeping sun is underwater in the square, and within the triangle alone, above the water, is the moon. But notice that the moon shines on the sun rather than the other way around. And he goes on to suggest that this portrays darkness over light. Now I can see, understanding that from this picture, darkness over light. Temporary success of wicked deeds and shady undertakings. The meaning he gives it is armed robbery. Now I can see, understanding it as shaky undertakings, or that darkness, covers the light. But I wouldn't necessarily understand that to be armed robbery. He also describes it as also meaning betrayal. But I think we can understand it as darkness covering the light. Now remember, of course, he ascribes water to the suit of swords. You know, we have water in every picture. 8 swords. Another star-shaped 4, that's another 8 of swords. Another star-shaped 4 in the water and 4 in air. A balance of justice. Means condemnation. Means condemnation. And notice we have fish and water plants. Where's the fish? I don't see the fish. Fish and water plants, Unless it's, I got ahead of myself. That was for number 9. So we just have a balance. Just have a balance of, justice, condemnation. Okay, here we have 9 swords with fish and water. 4 are in a square in the water, and 5 are above the water in the shape of a pentagram. Fish are in the square, and fish are in the water rather, and lily pads are in the air. He describes the fish as wanting to jump out of their element. So the fish want to escape, like a fish out of water. He says the image represents the attraction of evil, which temporarily prevails over the realization of evil. So that, I guess, the temptation of doing something that one knows they ought not. Expresses feelings of hatred and envy. The meaning he gives it is hate, envy, intoxication, alcoholism, and a state of decrepitude. Here we have 8 swords. Wait, did I do the wrong one? Oh, Lord have mercy. I did not turn. Wait, we have 9. Oh, this is 10. I apologize. I apologize. Well, see, I'm getting kind of confused. It's been a long day. 10 swords, arranged in a circle, half in water, half above. The moon is represented in its 4 stages and represents the evolution of evil. So he sees this as the evolution of evil. The extreme form of evil and the threats that hang over our heads. The meaning he gives it is enemies, an epidemic, or some type of contagious disease. So he sees this as an evil thing that's looming over us. And the next video will be on the courts. So that will be, I guess, 7. And then the last one will be study 8, and it will be the most brief. Now, I want to acknowledge that this study guide has been very unpopular. I mean, at the end of the day, maybe I have 10 or 20 viewers for each of these videos. So I'm sorry, you know, it'll be in a playlist for Eudes Picard. If you ever feel like coming back to it, there it'll be. But I just, you know, I have to keep life interesting for myself. And I really also kind of want to stay away from too much political stuff. Where, you know, as long as I feel like I'm a target, I don't want to have an arrow pointing at myself. I will speak my piece in my way, and I will continue to be brave. But there's also such a thing as self-preservation, so I have to be very careful at this moment. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind. Thank you, Marie. Thank you so much for your kindness and your generosity. It's gorgeous. And until next time, friends, be kind and brave most of all.